Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos, for that lovely introduction. And thanks to Friends of Socialist China and the International Manifesto Group for inviting me to take part today. You know, as a US citizen, I'm both amused and concerned about the way in which the word democracy is used so often here. I can only think that the people who shove it in our faces at every opportunity are simply protesting too much. If this country were truly democratic, there would be no need to constantly harp upon the word. I can tell you that democracy, that is to say a government apparatus that represents the will of the people, is long gone. People here have very little representation in our government. Put simply, we don't get what we want, even if the people we choose win electoral office. And that's very obvious to anyone paying attention. There are actual studies backing up what we can observe with our own two eyes. The wealthy have a bigger say than anybody else, and corporations, and outcomes favor lobbying groups and wealthy people. And the situation only grows worse over time, with the political duopoly of Democrats and Republicans agreeing on one thing, that the wishes of the people don't matter. Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, and corporate interests all have friends in Washington, while the average working person is appealed to with platitudes and phony stances. I think it's instructive to look at how the US treats its own people, because that same state won't treat the rest of the world any differently. For example, last year, the unions representing railroad workers narrowly rejected a contract negotiated with the railroad companies. And the major sticking point was the lack of paid sick time. President Biden and the Democrats forbade them to strike, claimed they didn't have any choice and that it was the best deal they could get. But what they didn't tell us was that Barack Obama exempted railroads from requirements that all federal contractors provide paid sick leave, and exempted them with an executive order. And that means Joe Biden could have issued a new executive order without having to go to Congress, and could have gotten the paid sick leave that he claimed he wanted railroad workers to have. There were lies told by politicians. The corporate media joined in, telling us that a strike would cost $2 billion a day. No one ever told us where this figure came from or what it was based on. But this example is reenacted on the world stage. During the 2020 presidential election, we heard from some of the same oligarchic representatives. The CEO of Boeing, which is one of the biggest defense contractors, said, quote, "I think both candidates, at least in my view, appear globally oriented and interested in the defense of our country, and I believe they'll support the industries. I don't think we're going to take a position on one being better than the other." In other words, the military-industrial complex gets what it wants regardless of who is in office. So we see Republicans, the avowed right-wing party, agreeing with Democrats, the supposedly left-wing party, on a variety of issues. The US commitment to continue the proxy war in the Ukraine at the cost of more than $113 billion to date, with the recent announcement of an additional $2 billion, goes unquestioned in Congress. Well, actually, a handful of Republicans express opposition, but only because, and they say this openly, that they want to attack China instead of Russia. This desire to stop what can't be stopped, China's growing economic prowess, takes on a strange and dangerous nature. Recently, the CEO of TikTok appeared at a congressional hearing, and the result was funny if one was in a good mood, and horrifying to anyone who took it seriously. Members of Congress asked whether TikTok controlled our Wi-Fi, or made our pupils dilate, or took orders directly from something called the CPC. I think they meant the CPC, Communist Party of China, but this non-existent CCP is the whipping boy of Democrats and Republicans to a grotesque degree. And it isn't funny because these nonsensical statements are nothing but war propaganda. How do we fight this? What do we do as individuals and organizations. One example of an effort to bring popular will to the process comes from an organization I'm affiliated with, the Black Alliance for Peace. This week on April 4th, 2023, Black Alliance for Peace, BAP for short, with the leadership of its Haiti Americas team, will launch its Zone of Peace initiative. I'll quote from the BAP declaration, quote, "In Havana, Cuba, on January 29th, 2014, the heads of state and governments of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean Nations, CELAC, declared Latin America and the Caribbean should be seen and respected as a zone of peace. This declaration from government representatives, however, has not translated into a people-centered movement across the region. The Black Alliance for Peace believes that it is only through the concentrated efforts of the people that the Americas will free itself of the anti-human, anti-democratic, and violent policies that Western imperialist subversion and militarism have brought to the people and nations in our region. Lifting up is a popular demand that our region be free of externally imposed state violence is even more important today than in 2014. From the assault on democracy in Haiti to the subversion and illegal sanctions directed at Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, the nations in Latin America and the Caribbean continue to find themselves in an existential battle against geostrategic interests of the hegemon to the north, the United States of America," unquote. This year is also the 200th anniversary of the Monroe Doctrine, which claimed that the entire hemisphere is the property of the United States. To this day, politicians refer to the Caribbean and Mexico and Central America and South America as their backyard. These are the same people who go on and on about a CCP, by the way. For the past 200 years, US troops have at various times invaded Haiti and Cuba and Nicaragua and Panama, and I'm leaving nations out. And when the US isn't sending soldiers, it's willing stooge nations like Jamaica and Barbados, who may lead the next invasion of Haiti with the help of and under the direction of Canada. That's why the popular will must be exercised through the Zone of Peace initiative, which would involve developing public education, advocacy, grassroots organizing, and social media campaigns. The rules-based, and this would expose the contradiction of this rules-based order through region-wide non-state campaigns and build capacity for a more effective strategic engagement. So I urge everyone to visit the blackallianceforpeace.com, sign up for our newsletter, and then you can endorse the initiative once it begins. And I want to talk before I finish about Haiti. I mentioned briefly that Biden recently visited with Justin Trudeau, and among other things, talked about Canada leading the next invasion. And BAP's Haiti and Americas team name was chosen quite deliberately. Haiti's been the laboratory for theft and domination. It is a Black nation, the first to throw off slavery, and it's been punished ever since because of it. First by France, the former colonizer, which threatened an invasion and re-enslavement if Haiti did not repay them in gold. Billions of dollars were paid for nearly the equivalent now of billions of dollars were paid for nearly 100 years. The US invaded Haiti during the Wilson administration and occupied for nearly 20 years. So they've had puppet governments, the kidnapping of their president, the core group comprised of US, Canada, France, and the UN, not a friendly and democratic organization, have worked to control that nation and undermine its people. So I just want to say that, you know, we have to be very careful and make sure that we don't allow some governments which claim to be leftist to join in on these attacks on Haiti. And if we are talking about democracy in this world, in this country, and in this region, it's something that we must pay attention to. You know, I told the story about domestic policy for a reason. it is antithetical to the nature of a state which demands domination, which demands the right to decide who runs Ukraine or who runs Venezuela, to also help its people. And probably not many people watching this, but there's a tendency to think that there can be some progressive choice in the US that still acts as an imperialist hegemon, and that's just not possible. So I think my 10 minutes are nearly up, and so I will wind up and say thank you all for joining me today, and please go to blackallianceforpeace.com and check out our Zone of Peace campaign. Thank you very much.